Welcome to this explainer. I want you to picture something with me. Imagine a majestic lion bathed in this dramatic, sun-dappled light, waking up deep inside a mountain cave. He stretches, shakes off the sleep, and just surveys his domain. It's incredibly cinematic. But this isn't just an animal waking up. It's the preparation for a massive revelation. Today, we're exploring the Sīhanāda Sutta, a foundational Buddhist text where this very lion serves as a brilliant metaphor. That lion? He's gearing up to unleash a roar that represents a supreme, completely unshakable truth. Now, as Bhikkhu Sumedha recently explained during a rain retreat discourse, this lion doesn't just roar blindly. First, he looks around with this boundless, incredible compassion for the smaller creatures who might get overwhelmed by the sheer power of what's coming. Then he runs 3 times in a circle with immense speed, and finally, he unleashes it. A roar so powerful, so absolutely deafening, that even the mighty elephants break their post ties and flee in terror. Symbolically, those panicked elephants, they represent the rival teachers of the Buddha's era. Because despite all their grand claims, their ideologies were just completely shattered by the Buddha's fearless proclamation of impermanence and suffering. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our cinematic roadmap for today. We'll start with the majestic roar, then we'll navigate the great trap before moving to the climax, shattering the eye. From there, we'll mechanically break down the chain of clinging and finally arrive at true liberation. It's an incredible journey from primal illusion to empowering awakening.
Chapter 1. The Majestic Roar, Proclaiming the Unshakable Truth.
Now, what's really interesting here is how our text sets itself apart. When we talk about the lion's roar, we're talking about a highly strategic metaphor for the Buddha's fearless insight. We are zooming in on the Sīhanāda Sutta, the shorter discourse set at Savatthi. This text provides a rigorous, razor-sharp philosophical framework. It asks the really tough questions about why other spiritual systems, despite their intense ethical disciplines, ultimately fall short of complete liberation. On the flip side, you have the Sīhanāda Sutta, the Great Discourse, which is much more about defending the Buddha's personal authority and extraordinary awakening against critics. So today, we're zeroing in on that precise, unique path to liberation laid out in the shorter discourse.
And you know what? This roar isn't just for the Buddha himself. He actually explains that his disciples can confidently proclaim this roar too by reaching these 4 degrees of true recluse, essentially the 4 stages of awakening. You've got the stream enterer who shatters the first 3 fetters, going all the way up to the perfected one, or arahant, who has completely destroyed every mental taint. The Buddha tells his disciples their confidence to roar is backed by 4 very practical things: their trust in the teacher, certainty in the teaching, fulfillment of moral precepts, and a genuine, deep affection for their fellow practitioners.
Moving into Chapter 2, The Great Trap, looking at the extremes of being and non-being. Picture humanity bathed in this high-contrast light and shadow, totally trapped in a massive philosophical dilemma. We are constantly pulled between opposing extremes. On one side, eternalism, the view of being, where you cling to a permanent soul that just lasts forever. On the other side, annihilationism, the view of non-being, clinging to the idea that everything is completely erased at death. They seem like total opposites, right? But the Buddha reveals a wild twist. They secretly stem from the exact same delusion. Both views are rooted in the deeply entrenched notion of an I. And once that I takes root, the mind just spins an endless web of speculation, which only strengthens our attachment instead of dissolving it. So, that brings us to the million-dollar question. If all these grand philosophical theories are basically just traps, what actually keeps beings bound to suffering? Let's just sit with that for a second and really feel the weight of it. The answer is clinging, upadana. It's literally the fuel for the whole cycle of birth and death. The Buddha points out 4 distinct types here. We've got clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views and dogmas, and clinging to rules and observances. But here's the absolute kicker. So the crucial point is this final type, clinging to a doctrine of self, or at the vadu upadana. Other traditions might tell you to give up worldly pleasures or strict dogmas, sure. But complete liberation means you have to abandon this subtlest, trickiest trap of all, the deep-seated assumption of an I, a me, or a soul. Which leads us perfectly into Chapter 3, shattering the I and deconstructing the illusion. All right, get ready for some high-definition mental imagery, because we're about to completely shatter our conventional understanding of reality. To get this, we have to grasp anatta, or not-self. Whether it's our physical form, our feelings, our consciousness, none of it contains a permanent self. Bhikkhu Sumedha uses this brilliant, highly visual river analogy. Picture a rushing, powerful river. From a distance, it looks like a single solid thing. But if we zoom in for a really close cinematic inspection, what is it actually? It's just water molecules in constant, incessant flow. The river is literally just a convenient label we slap onto a physical process. And this brilliantly illustrates what we can call the robot analogy. Think about it through a modern lens. In the real world, you never actually see another person's consciousness, right? You just see a physical, material structure moving around and speaking, kind of like a robot. We project a soul onto them entirely because we are stuck in the delusion of our own I. Bhikkhu Sumedha points out that projecting this permanent meaning onto an emptiness we simply cannot hold onto, that is the very root of our dukkha, our suffering. But our minds are incredibly sneaky. Often, the mind tries to hide the I behind a watcher or an observer, creating this false sense of separation from the experience itself. And this brings us to a mind-blowing historical detail. Bhikkhu Sumedha noted that this very I view is the foundation for 62 specific wrong views discussed in early Buddhist texts. And get this. Tradition says that when the Buddha systematically exposed and dismantled those 62 speculative views, his teaching was so intensely powerful that the earth literally trembled 62 times, one seismic shock for every single illusion shattered. Chapter 4. The Chain of Clinging, Dependent Origination. Now, let's look at the gears behind this, because clinging isn't just some random accident. It's a mechanical, inevitable cascade of cause and effect. It starts with ignorance, which leads to formations, cascading rapidly down into consciousness, into mentality, hitting our sense spaces, and making contact. That contact immediately leads to feeling, which sparks craving. And finally, that craving solidifies into clinging. By mapping out the cogs of this process step by step, you realize that suffering is just a conditioned process. It has a specific architecture. Finally, Chapter 5, True Liberation, and the End of the Chain. And because this chain has an architecture, it means it can be dismantled. The Buddha's roar isn't just nice theory. If you replace that very first domino, ignorance, with true knowledge, the entire chain reverses. It dismantles suffering right at its source. Let's move to and see how this builds into our everyday reality. Bhikkhu Sūzameda emphasizes that the Dhamma isn't locked away in some dead past, and you absolutely don't have to wait for some unborn future to find it. It is available here and now. True liberation is achieved through the active practice of the Noble Eightfold Path in this exact present moment. When a practitioner finally drops that restless agitation of the I and stops clinging to all four levels, they personally attain Nibbana. It's an incredible victory. As the Sutta vividly describes it, the seeker arrives at this triumphant, ultimate realization. Birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being. That is the absolute victory over the cycle of suffering. So, we've traced the lion's roar from the shadowy caves of ignorance, right past the fleeing elephants of rival dogmas, and straight into the radiant, cinematic light of true liberation. But as we fade to black today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. If the doctrine of the self is the ultimate trap, and the I is really just a brilliantly disguised illusion, who exactly is observing this explainer right now? Thank you so much for exploring this with us. Keep questioning, keep observing, and I'll catch you in the next one.